I'm pleased to interview today James Libson, who's the managing partner of Mishcon de Reya. James has been at the firm for 34 years, from a trainee through to managing partner, and has been involved with some of the most high-profile litigation cases in the UK, including one of the cases being made into a Hollywood film where an actor played James. And I would like to hear a bit more about Mishcon, the culture, the strategy, and where Mishcon is headed. Thanks, James. I wanted to start by saying you've been a hugely successful litigator. I've even watched you, or an actor playing you, in Denial, and you've been in some hugely high-profile litigation and a very well-respected and successful litigator. What made you move into management and managing partner?
Well, here at Mishcon's, because we still see ourselves as quite a small firm, although we're much bigger than we used to be, and management and looking after clients, we didn't really distinguish between. People took on management roles, but we never really dropped our client work. And most of the lawyers here who are in management are lawyers first, want to still do client work, and managers second. And from quite an early age, I was involved in management. So I was running departments here from quite an early age. I've run the litigation department, the private department, even the employment department. So I've been around the firm. And I was also something we called executive partner for many years, which was helping the managing partner, who was Kevin Gold at the time, and who's now executive chair. And so I've probably been doing management for the last 20 years, and doing maybe even longer. And doing the two things side by side has always been the natural place. And I couldn't do one without the other. I mean, I would hate just to do management, and I'm happy to do the management, but I love still doing the legal work.
You're very good at time management.
It is. I'm not so good at time management, but you have bits of the year, the week, the month that are busier doing management, and other times you have to concentrate on the client work. And you do have to. Any lawyer will be able to tell you that as soon as a client detects that there is something more important than them, the client will lose confidence in you. So when you are having to prioritize, you do have to make sure that you are looking after your clients as best you can, even with the pressures of management. I'm not the best person at time management, but on the whole, things seem to work out.
How would you describe your management style? I guess if you're focused on clients and you're busy with client work and, as you said, making clients feel the most important, how do you balance that with equally making the staff feel the most important? And I guess, summarising it, how would you describe your management style, or how would others describe your management style?
I don't know how others would. I hope I'm open. I hope that I'm collaborative. I hope I can be firm when I need to be. And I hope also that people would say that there's a degree of strategic leadership as well, and that we've got a direction. The complaints you hear, I'm not deaf and blind to the complaints, is that that people don't understand sometimes the direction an organisation's going in, the firm's going in, and I have learned that you can't communicate enough, no matter how many times you think you have told the partnership, people beyond the partnership, what we're doing, how we're doing, you can't do it enough. And so I've learned that over the last few years. You just have to be more open and more transparent in what you're doing than you possibly think you need to be.
Okay, and over the years, I've met a lot of partners. I've been in this for over 20 years, and everyone seems to have an opinion on Mishcon. You're a firm that, you talked at the beginning about, a slightly smaller firm, but you've grown, but yet everybody knows Mishcon. How would you describe Mishcon as a culture?
Well, I think I would say that we still have an attitude. My favourite quote about Mishcon, which I've been reading out for since it was made, was in The Economist, which called us the punk rockers of the legal industry, and I like that. We're probably a little through our adolescence now, and a bit more grown up in what we do, but we still have an attitude. We're still prepared to take on institutions. We still have a sort of a challenger mentality, and that's not only when we're acting on those types of matters or cases. It's also when we're acting for more established and institutional clients that we will try and challenge the status quo. We try and encourage quite a lot of diversity of thought and opinion within the organisation, and collegiality. And I like the fact that people have an opinion. The other thing that we've done over the years is that we've invested very heavily in our brand, and lots of law firms do that now. But we were early adopters of doing that, recognising that actually it is a business, and it has a brand, and we should actually invest in that.
Yeah, I've always thought your strapline, it's business but personal. Every other law firm looks at that with a bit of envy, I think. It's just brilliant, encapsulates so much. And just talking about the brand line and strap lines, it's business but it's personal. Would you say you're still very much a kind of a law firm for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial clients? Is that still the sort of heartbeat of the firm?
We are a law firm, yeah, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial clients. We merged with Taylor Vinters a few years ago, and that means that we've got a lot of younger and early stage entrepreneurs as well, which we didn't have so much exposure to. And I would say entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial spirit. So we act for a lot of very, very big institutions. We have a very institutional client base, for example, in our real estate department. But even there, like most people want to think of themselves, still businesses have an entrepreneurial spirit, and we want to do things in an entrepreneurial way. But we also act for lots of the very, very successful individuals of the world who do things in their own way and in their own, plough their own paths. And so we have to be able to look after them as well, and we enjoy looking after those clients.
And you mentioned before about communicating strategy and your strategic role. Where do you see Mishcon's going? You talked about a range of clients with that entrepreneurial spirit. What does Mishcons of tomorrow look like?
Well, I hope that Mishcons of tomorrow will feel like Mishcons of today, and that's a very important aspect of what we're doing. We've just come to the end of a long strategic period that we called our 10-year vision, that we put in place 9.5, 10 years ago, and we're coming to the end of it. So we're now thinking about our next strategic phase up to 2030, in a thing we're grandly calling Vision 2030. And so we're thinking very deep and hard about what the firm will look like, what areas of business it will be, and where it needs to be. And I think the governing thought is we want it, as I say, to feel very much like it feels and has done for the last, while I've been here. But we really want to make sure that we are very strong in the markets where we have found ourselves. So in innovation, in the whole innovation economy, in real estate, in the world of private and private clients, and through that a real spine of disputes. Disputes runs through the very veins of the firm, and across all of those sectors there'll be disputes and, of course, advisory with corporate and M&A.
So, you're very well known for litigation, as we started, particularly yourself. How do you see the future of litigation? I know, with funding, I often hear on the market, there almost seems a conflict between firms who want charge out rates to go up and up and up each year, and clients who often want it to go the other way, particularly, I guess, with litigation where there's a lot of risk involved and a lot of costs can be racked up. How do you see that as a conflict, and how do you sort of square that circle?
Litigation is definitely changing. I think our market, the legal industry, has talked about change for 25, 30, as long as you and I have been in the industry, have talked about change. And I don't think really felt it in the way lots of other industries have felt it. But we're now really beginning to feel it. And we're feeling it quite sharply in lots of different areas. And litigation is definitely one of them. Funding is changing the market. Group actions coming into this country in a way that we haven't seen is coming to the market. Challenger firms and challenger ways of doing it are coming in a big way. We've had lots of boutique litigation firms start up over the last 10 and 15 years, but that's accelerating, and also the capital that's coming in to support those firms is changing the market. And so where you would have had a few firms that really dominated the space, and remember, until relatively recently, even the big firms didn't have a great appetite for litigation, with the exception of one or two like Herbert Smith.
Yeah.
Everyone now has an appetite for it. The arbitration world is growing, and so there's all this change in the market in a world that feels more argumentative, more contentious, and so it's interesting. It's interesting, and we're really focusing on it, and I'm finding it actually fascinating, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
And in terms of yourself, talks about your litigation background, and you're still litigating with clients as well as managing and involved with strategy. So you've got a lot going on. What's next? Well,
I've got another 2 years in this job, and then I'm going to carry on practicing as a lawyer, which I still love. I've been exposed to a ton of different things during this job, and a lot of different opportunities. Met a lot of people. I've taken a position as a visiting fellow at Oxford University recently, and just starting exploring what those opportunities are. So what I hope is I will be able to remain very involved in the firm in some capacity, that I will carry on running a practice, but I will start doing some other things outside of the firm as well, whether it's an academic life or charity life, or maybe just have some fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like much time for fun.
Yeah.
And just picking up on that theme of charity, I know Mishcon's is, well, I guess a question to you is, how important is charity and giving back to Mishcon's and the partnership as a firm?
I think being part of charity is one thing, and giving back is one thing. I think being part of community and communities and civil life is very important. So you asked before about some of why people know Mishcons. One of the reasons is because we take on causes, and the reason why we take on causes is not because necessarily we want to just look for the causes to take on, but the people who come here are involved in things. We attract people who are involved in things, who are passionate about things. And hopefully we give them the platform to do that, whether it's doing pro bono work, whether it's doing advocacy work. We're one of the few law firms that have a politics and law department. We love the intersection of law and politics and civic life. And that gives people, as I say, an opportunity to get involved in things that they're passionate about. And again, that is part of, when we look at the firm and saying, even as it changes, we want it to be the same. That's part of being the same, making sure that those opportunities continue to arise.
It was interesting you talk about the interaction of law and politics, because I know particularly with a lot of US firms, they can be quite closely aligned to certain political parties, where we see a bit less of that here. How do you straddle that kind of, or are you affiliated to political parties, or do you sort of straddle a middle ground? Or
well, we're not affiliated to a party. We're agnostic from a party political point of view. Lord Mishcon, our founder, was a member of the Labour Party and was a shadow minister in the House of Lords, and was very associated with the party. We were privileged to have Keir Starmer here for a little while as a consultant, but we are agnostic, and we advise on both and all sides of the fence, and have done for many years. Even Lord Mishcon himself was an incredibly well-positioned person, and was a conciliary for people from all walks of life and all political parties.
And going back to yourself and your illustrious career, have you had any mentors, or is there anything, what's the best piece of advice you've been given by anybody?
I've been privileged to have lots of mentors. I worked with Lord Mishcon for the first few years of my career. I worked very closely, and I still work very closely with Anthony Julius. I've worked with Anthony for the entire time I've been here, 34 years. He's been at the firm nearly 45 years. Wow. So, one of the things that has been fantastic about the firm has been the longevity that it's provided people. And Kevin Gold has also been a mentor of mine, our former managing partner. I was trying to think when there's always things where people ask this question, and I can never go back to a specific moment. I remember very early on making a terrible, stupid mistake on a case when I was just qualified and working with Anthony and another colleague, a very long-standing colleague of ours, Rowena Herpen-Smith, who just left the firm last year. And I remember how calm and sort of generous they were with their time in sorting it out. And that's always stuck with me. And it was a moment when in a different environment, in a different firm, in a different maybe industry, one would have resorted very quickly to the sort of blame culture, and it was about just sorting out the issue. And that's really stuck with me. And I hope that it's something that we can inculcate a bit here, because there is a inclination to panic, which I really have in life, and it's best not to panic.
Which is a good message for everybody.
Yeah, it's best not to panic most of the time.
Panic.
Yes.
So if you weren't a lawyer, what else would you like to have done, or could still do?
Well, I always wanted to be a teacher. I kind of ended up being a lawyer almost accidentally, and I would have quite liked to have been a teacher. I think I think the reason I have loved being a lawyer, I really love being a lawyer. I'm not cynical about it at all. My son's gone into the law, and I was really happy that he did. I think it's a great career that is intellectually stimulating. It's rewarding. It can be financially rewarding. It can be rewarding. You can make your contribution. So I think it's a great thing, and I think it actually gives you and the ability to teach. It's still a profession, and we need to make sure that we preserve it as a profession. And teaching people, trainees and younger lawyers is absolutely an obligation. And so that's what I would have done, but I seem to have been able to scratch that itch being a lawyer.
I think it's an interesting comment you make on teaching, particularly for junior lawyers entering the profession. And I think a lot of firms over the last few years have really struggled with the balance between hybrid working, being in the office, and that kind of challenge, which in a sense sometimes becomes a bit of a conflict as to what people need. What's your policy here on hybrid working versus being in the office?
So we adopted a policy very early on when it looked as if during the pandemic, when people were going to be able to come back to work, of really a principle-based hybrid working policy. So the principles were, you need to be here for the things you need to be here for. So you need to be here for client demands, you need to be here for training purposes, you need to be here for team building processes and collaboration processes. And we need the principles to drive attendance rather than rules just to drive attendance. We've grown to the stage where even if I were to say to everyone, you've got to be in 5 days a week, I couldn't fit everyone in the building in the way in which we're configured. So we still need to have a degree of flexibility. And what that has led to is a sort of a balancing out of attendance with the normal pattern that you see across work in general, with high attendance Tuesdays to Thursdays, quite high attendance on Mondays now, and pretty low attendance on Fridays, but even that's been rising. And so we have around 2/3 to 75% of people in Tuesdays to Thursdays, and like other organisations, not much to compare to that from pre-pandemic days, because no one used to keep data in pre-pandemic days. So I don't know on a given day how many people were in the building for holiday, illness, and all the rest of it, not for working flexibly. So it feels very busy in those days. We've also created an environment where our open areas, our general areas, our client lounge is very important to the way in which we do business. It's very important that there's a buzz of activity there, and you will see mostly Mondays to Thursdays that it's always very busy. It's a bit quieter today, but It's a busy area. So that's where we've balanced. Everything remains looked at all the time, but that's where we are at the moment.
Great. Well, thank you, James, for your time today in answering some questions and giving our audience a bit more insight into Mishcon and your personal career and where the firm's heading. And we're really grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.